started on the sawmill down here when I was 16. I went out the bush now and again with my uncle, and I sleep a cutting of a Saturday, and with a crosscut saw sawing off logs for him and barking logs and that sort of thing. I was at an auction one day, and all that was amongst scrap, not complete, and I discovered there was new pistons and the 3 new cylinders, and the crankcase was there, and new bearings and that in it, and a reconditioned shaft. So I thought, geez, I can get that together, and did that. Here's a turntable. Made out of the centres of 2 maple leaf wheels. The axles are taken out of the diff. I turn the shaft to go through there, which that pulley's on. And these ends here are caps off the end of a Holden diff. That was sort of my thing, but I had to keep that sharp and running square with the landing square, and your log had to be sitting firm, it's not the rock. This is a portable sawmill. Coming down our rubbish tip, GP Motors used cars. They used to have a hot rod track down here one time, the town, a lot of them, and they, that was on the hood of one of the cars, that was GP Motors one. There's a motor, an F100 Ford powers this. There's a petrol tank out of a Holden car. There's a bits of everything. It's just in me. I see something and I thought I can change that a bit, and Bob's your uncle.
I'm the sort of a fellow, I'd take a load of stuff to the tip and come back with another load. If I saw anything at the tip that I thought I could make something out of, I'd bring it home and put it over in front of the workshop, and then when I got an idea, I'd just use it, whatever was there. I'd just look at a thing and I think, oh, that needs something to set it off. The front of the park, you know, I'll paint a goanna and a wild duck and a fox and all that sort of thing, kookaburra, which blends in with this area. Sometimes I wouldn't intend to make a certain thing, but I'd see something and think, oh, I could do something with that, and you go from there. With reference to the barbecue area up there, we've got it set up like an old paddle steamer now, but originally I just built a barbecue there. And then I noticed in the wet weather everybody was wet and the barbecue wasn't popular, so we decided to put a roof at the end of it. Then I put a potbelly stove in it to keep them warm. And with the smoke coming out the potbelly stove, it reminded me of the paddle steamers up on the Murray, so I built a bow on it and a hull, and then we had the whole lot under a roof, like in an old derelict boat. Then the other odds and sods you see around the place, well, little railway engine up there, I built that more or less for the kids to play in. found that people go into caravan parks. Well, if the kids are bored, the parents have got a problem. So if you can keep the kids happy, then the parents are happy too.
I was married at 19 and had my first child at 25, and it probably wasn't until then that I realised that the money was never going to be enough. And so I started sewing, of course. It's what you go back to, is what you know. And people would give me trousers and things, and I'd cut them down and make overalls and things for my daughter so she could crawl around outside. And you look at this little baby and you realise that you are responsible for putting them on this earth, so you better do a good job at raising them and finding ways to do that with limited resources. My middle daughter, she tells a great story about the homemade pyjamas. They'd go to sleepovers and her friends would poke fun at her duck pyjamas with the hot pink collar and that Mum had made her. But she wore them for years and years, and in the end I think it was just to show it to her friends that, you know, she knew it was daggy, but she'd wear them because Mum had made them for her. I started off patching because I'd sew at home, and of course the women that don't patch their husbands' pants, they'd bring them over. Often the husbands would bring them over for me to patch, but I'd prefer to barter, so I used to have one husband that would make me a cake and I'd patch his pants for him because his wife didn't like patching, so he thought that was a fair trade. When I'd throw out clothing, I'd chop the buttons off, and I still collect them. If I throw out clothing, I still chop off the buttons and put them in the jars. When we were building the house, I made all our drapes, and I got all water damaged fabric, washed the lot, and made all our drapes for hundreds instead of thousands. And so that just gives me a good feeling. I think, well, they're just as good as if I'd spent thousands of dollars, but I didn't have to.
Sometimes I look for a certain patina. If you look at that bit of green tin over there, that is perfect. It's gorgeous. The green bit with the rock. This is the first tip I started scavenging at because I was living in Nowa at the time, and so I used to come for a drive out here and scavenge for stuff. I usually walk around a couple of times. It's, you know, because there's so much stuff here. You've got to have a really good look. When you're scavenging and you're having a look around tips and you see all the waste, you think there must be some way this can be used. When I finally got into sculpture, I discovered that, you know, the things I really wanted had already been used and they were more interesting for that. I didn't want to use big, shiny, brand new pieces of metal. I wanted to use materials that had been used before, that had a history, and there was an imprint of that history on that material. If I find something really, really exciting at the tip, I'll bring it home, and then the work will centre around that item. If it's really interesting, or it has an interesting patina, or it gives me an idea. For example, with Wee Willie Winky, it would have been the old lantern, and it would have just evolved from finding that piece and trying to incorporate that into some artwork. Consumerism and materialism are the main themes throughout my work, just because I use discarded materials. It's all about making something out of nothing, making the most out of adversity, perhaps, overcoming challenges, That's great. I could use that in something.
I had a caravan when I came here. It was going to get knocked about out in the open. I built myself a saw bench out of scrap metal, and all the timber used in everything like that was cut on the place over the bench. And so I built this particular building, and I had the caravan in alongside it. It was just as a shed with poles in the ground, beams across to support the roof, and an outside coating of sawn timber to stop the weather and the wind. And it was shelter, and I felt pretty good because I had a stove in there and a heater in there. The electricity had come, so I even had electricity on the place. And it wasn't quite as rough as it had been originally. My wife asked me what I had here before we married, and she said, "Well, what's you got hot water system?" I went, No. Well, where do you wash, and you got a shower, etc.? I said, "Oh no." I said, I'd come off the bulldozer, absolutely covered in dust and ashes. I would jump into the dam, clothes and all, swim around, take my clothes off, shake them, hang them on the fence, and then come and, I've had my wash, and I've also washed my clothes ready for the next day. Definitely you couldn't just go out and buy things. I still have the bad habit of straightening bent nails. I can't throw them away because you'll never know when you need one.
Well, my husband was a hoarder in more ways than one, and he also was a bird recorderist. He was interested in birds, and we used to go all over Victoria and we'd collect these bird songs, and then we'd bring them home and he'd put them on tape, and eventually bird observers, they got interested in making tape recordings. So they got together and they used to just record all day. And it took a long time, actually about 20 years. I made a point of recording the birds around our area, and then the little walks that we did do, we put down those birds too, and we actually got the list up to about 130 bird songs. He was interested in it all the time. But don't we all hoard?
I started in 1997, drew up a lot of plans, and I salvaged a lot of the steel from different places. I salvaged a caravan to put on the back. It is called a fifth wheeler. A fifth wheeler is something that you got four wheels on the back and you have a turntable. The turntable is classed as a wheel, and that's the reason why I salvaged that turntable. It'll take about 5 minutes to unhook the caravan from the truck. All you got to do is pull the lever, put them legs down there and away you go. If you buy one, yes, it's nice, but when you finish, it might cost $100,000 for your caravan, but you've got to buy something that costs $100,000. And I go to the me-tongue tip down there, and I find bits and pieces. We find old beds, the angle line can be used. And sometimes I go in there and I find a few different things, and everything just goes together bit by bit. When it's sitting on the back of the truck and it's going down the road, I know I've achieved something. Like millionaires can achieve something because they've got money. But when you haven't got much money, well, you only do these things bit by bit. When it's finished, I can say to myself, well, I've done a bloody good job. I've built for myself. What's the song? I've done it my way. You want to come for a holiday with me?
Zach, my oldest son, came home and said, "Dad, it's enough. The shed is too full. They're closing the tip down. We're having a clean out." And I was almost in tears for the whole weekend because of what he took to the tip. But somebody else would have got it.